The council chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of alien breathing and the quiet tick of Jake Morrison's chronometer. For the first time in galactic history, the mighty Galactic Council faced an opponent that was not interested in negotiation or compromise but only in results. The weight of that realization settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Ambassador Claire Johnson stepped forward from her position near the rear of the human delegation. As humanity's expert on alien psychology, she had studied every species in the galaxy and understood their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. Her voice was soft but clear as she addressed the terrified delegates. Claire explained that humanity did not want to destroy the galactic civilization that had taken millions of years to build. Humans wanted to join that civilization as equals rather than as junior partners who were barely tolerated. The problem was that some species only understood respect when it came from a position of strength, rather than from a position of weakness. Reminded the council that humans had tried peaceful diplomacy for 15 years without success. Every request for fair treatment had been ignored or dismissed. Every attempt at compromise had been met with increased restrictions and insults. The council had forced humanity to choose between accepting permanent second-class status or demonstrating. Why that was not an acceptable option, the hive creatures conferred among themselves in rapid, high-pitched tones that grew more frantic as their collective consciousness tried to find a solution to an impossible problem. Their species had never faced an opponent that was willing to risk everything for a principle. The concept of fighting for honor rather than survival was completely foreign to their way of thinking. The gaseous ethereals shimmered with agitation as their harmonic frequencies became chaotic and discordant. Their entire philosophy was based on finding peaceful solutions through understanding and compromise. The idea that some conflicts could only be resolved through demonstrations of power challenged everything they believed about civilization and progress. The Zentari military advisors continued running tactical simulations on their personal computers with growing desperation. Each analysis confirmed what they already knew but refused to accept. Their fleets were designed for intimidation and police actions against inferior opponents. They had never been tested against an enemy with superior technology and tactical knowledge. Council Prime Zex Kaller made one final attempt to maintain his authority by accusing humanity of bluffing. He declared that no species would risk galactic war over trade disputes and colony rights. His massive form dominated the center platform, but his voice lacked the conviction that had once commanded respect from every delegate in the chamber. Jake Morrison nodded to Captain Lisa Rodriguez, who activated a small device on her belt. Throughout the galaxy, human ships received the signal and simultaneously fired warning shots at carefully selected targets. The demonstration was coordinated with precision that would have been impossible for any other species to achieve. Uninhabited asteroids were reduced to vapor in seconds, while derelict space stations that had been abandoned for centuries simply ceased to exist. The shots were fired at minimum power levels, but their accuracy was perfect and their destructive capability was obvious to anyone watching. Every target was completely destroyed without any collateral damage to nearby objects. Rodriguez spoke calmly as she explained that the demonstration represented human weapons operating at their lowest possible settings. At full power, each shot could penetrate planetary shields and core moons or small planets. The weapons that had just vaporized asteroids could easily destroy any ship or station in the galaxy. The Crystalline Collective's ambassador rose from its platform and spoke with a voice like grinding stones. The silicon-based being explained that humans had treated its people with more respect and dignity in 5 years than the Council had shown in 5 centuries. Perhaps it was time for the galactic establishment to listen to voices they had been ignoring for too long. Other marginalized species began adding their voices to the growing chorus of support for humanity's position. The nomadic void walkers spoke about human willingness to trade fairly without demanding cultural changes. The Cybernetic Synthetic Union praised human acceptance of artificial intelligence as a legitimate form of life. Even some of the Council's own member species began expressing doubts about the current system. Smaller civilizations that had been overshadowed by the dominant powers saw this as their chance to gain more influence in galactic affairs. The monolithic authority that had ruled space for generations was beginning to crack under pressure. Jake Morrison checked his chronometer and announced that 5 minutes remained for the council to reach a decision. The chamber was filled with urgent conversations as species that had never questioned council authority began considering the possibility of change. The comfortable certainty of galactic hierarchy was collapsing before their eyes. Council Prime Zexcalar looked around the chamber and saw his political support evaporating like morning mist. The other council members were distancing themselves from his hardline position as they realized that resistance would only lead to destruction. His military advisors had already admitted that victory was impossible against human forces. The Prime's yellow eyes met Jake Morrison's steady gaze across the chamber. In that moment, he saw something that finally made him understand what humanity truly represented. These were not the primitive barbarians he had dismissed for so many years. They were apex predators who had learned to disguise their true nature until the moment they chose to reveal it, with the dignity of a warrior. Accepting honorable defeat, Zexcalar spoke the words that would change galactic civilization forever. The Council recognized humanity's petition for full membership with all rights and privileges. The blockade of New Haven Colony was immediately lifted. Discussions of reparations for past injustices would begin at the next regular session. He paused and looked directly at Jake Morrison before continuing. The Prime welcomed humanity to the Galactic Council with a warning to try not to conquer everyone else during their first week of membership. There was grudging respect in his voice as he acknowledged that he had seriously underestimated human capabilities and determination. Jake Morrison's stern expression finally cracked into a genuine smile as he replied that humans were not interested in conquering anyone. They simply wanted to make sure that no one would be able to conquer them. He explained that there was an important difference between seeking dominance and ensuring survival. As the historic council session ended and delegates began filing out, Admiral Wells' voice came over the communication system one final time. She ordered all fleet commanders to begin integration protocols and prepare for the next phase of human galactic involvement. The age of human isolation was officially over, and the age of true partnership could finally begin. Panic swept through the council chamber like a wave as the alien delegates tried to process what they were seeing on the screens. The hive creatures buzzed frantically among themselves while their collective consciousness struggled to understand how humans had managed to deceive them so completely. The gaseous ethereals pulsed with colors that had never been seen before as their harmonic frequencies turned sharp and discordant. General Patricia Hayes stepped forward from her position behind Jake Morrison and activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The three-dimensional image showed the true scope of humanity's military preparations across multiple star systems. Hidden bases appeared on the map like glowing dots, scattered throughout space in positions the Council had never suspected. Patricia's voice was calm and professional as she explained how humanity had spent the last 5 years establishing secret installations in 17 different systems. While the Council had been debating whether to grant humans mining rights on worthless planets, the Earth Defense Force had been building supply depots and weapon platforms in locations that gave them strategic control over major shipping routes. The display shifted to show humanity's trade relationships with species that the Council had dismissed as unimportant. The silicon-based Crystalline Collective had provided rare minerals in exchange for human technology. The nomadic Voidwalkers had shared their knowledge of hidden jump points throughout the galaxy. The Cybernetic Synthetic Union had helped humans develop better computer systems and artificial intelligence. Every species that the Council had labeled as problematic or unsuitable had found a friend in humanity. These forgotten races had been waiting for someone to treat them as equals instead of obstacles to galactic harmony. Humans had offered partnership where the Council had offered only restrictions and condescension. Council Prime Zexcalar's massive form shook with rage as he realized how thoroughly humanity had outmaneuvered the galactic establishment. His yellow eyes blazed with fury as he accused the humans of unprecedented treachery and violation of galactic law. His voice boomed across the chamber as he demanded an explanation for this betrayal of counsel. Trust. Jake Morrison faced the Prime's anger with calm determination. He reminded the Council that humanity had never agreed to limit their military development or restrict their diplomatic contacts. The treaties they had signed only covered trade routes and colony locations. Everything else had been assumptions made by aliens who believed they understood human nature. The chamber erupted in arguments as different species began blaming each other for the intelligence failure. The hive creatures claimed their collective consciousness had been too focused on internal harmony to notice external threats. The ethereals admitted they had been too trusting of human intentions. Even the proud Zentari military began making excuses for their failure to detect humanity's preparations. Dr. Rachel Stone approached the central platform and easily accessed the Council's tactical computers with codes that should have been impossible for any human to possess. Her fingers moved across the holographic interface with practiced ease as she brought up military assessments that made the alien delegates gasp in horror. The combined fleets of all Council species numbered approximately 8,000 vessels of various sizes and capabilities. The display showed their current positions and readiness levels with detailed analysis of their strengths and weaknesses. Rachel's voice was matter-of-fact as she explained that humanity's current deployment included 12,000 ships with another 6,000 held in reserve. The numbers alone were shocking enough, but Rachel continued with information that made the situation even worse for the Council. Human weapons testing footage appeared on the screens, showing destructive capabilities that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about the laws of physics. Singularity bombs that could collapse entire star systems, reduced suns to black holes in seconds. Nanite swarms demonstrated their ability to disassemble enemy fleets at the molecular level, turning massive warships into clouds of component atoms. Temporal disruption fields showed their power to age enemy vessels from pristine condition to rusted scrap metal in minutes. The weapons were beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. The alien delegates watched in stunned silence as human technology revealed capabilities that seemed more like magic than science. The peaceful species that dominated galactic civilization had never needed to develop such destructive tools. Their conflicts were settled through negotiation and compromise rather than the total warfare that humans had perfected. Patricia Hayes brought up tactical simulations that showed the likely outcome of any military conflict between humanity and the Council forces. The projections were devastating for the aliens, with their fleets being destroyed or disabled within hours of engagement. Human mobility and firepower advantages were so overwhelming that the Council's numerical superiority became meaningless. The Crystalline Collective's ambassador spoke for the first time during the session. The being of living mineral explained that humans had treated them with more respect in 5 years than the Council had shown in 5 centuries. Other marginalized species began voicing similar sentiments as they realized this might be their chance to gain equal treatment. Jake Morrison checked his chronometer and announced that 15 minutes remained for the Council to make their decision. The casual arrogance that had dominated the chamber at the beginning of the session had completely disappeared. In its place was fear and uncertainty as the alien delegates realized they faced their first real challenge in generations. Council Prime Zexcaler attempted to maintain his authority by declaring that humanity was bluffing and would never risk galactic war. His voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier as doubt crept into his words. The other Council members showed no support for his position as they studied the tactical displays showing human military superiority. The hive creatures began calculating probabilities of survival, while the ethereals tried to find harmonious solutions to an impossible situation. The Zentari military advisors ran simulation after simulation, hoping to find some scenario where their forces could achieve victory. Every analysis reached the same conclusion, that resistance would be futile and costly. Rachel Stone activated another display showing the precision of human weapons as ships throughout the galaxy simultaneously fired at predetermined targets. Uninhabited asteroids and abandoned space stations were reduced to dust with surgical accuracy that demonstrated complete control over the destructive forces at humanity's disposal. The demonstration was perfectly timed to show that humans were not making empty threats, but were fully prepared to follow through on their ultimatum. The Council now faced a choice between accepting humanity's demands or watching their civilization burn in the first galactic war in 1,000 years. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the council chamber and felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders. The alien delegates around him continued their casual conversations as if nothing important was happening. Their dismissive attitude was exactly what he had expected and exactly what would make his next words so shocking. He cleared his throat and began to speak in a voice that carried clearly across the vast chamber. For 15 years, humanity had followed every law and respected every treaty the Council had created. They had accepted restrictions on their colonies and limitations on their trade routes. They had endured insults and dismissals with patience that their ancestors would have found impossible to understand. The hive creatures clicked softly among themselves while the gaseous ethereals pulsed with bored colors. Council Prime Zex Kaller lounged on his platform with the casual arrogance of someone who had never faced a real challenge to his authority. The other alien species showed similar levels of disinterest as Jake recounted humanity's grievances. Jake's voice grew stronger as he spoke about the suffering on New Haven colony. 2 million human settlers were trapped without medical supplies or food shipments because the Council decided they needed to be taught a lesson. Children were dying while their parents watched helplessly, and the Council called it necessary for galactic stability. The chamber erupted in dismissive sounds as the alien delegates expressed their opinions about humanity's complaints. The hive creatures chittered with what sounded like laughter, while the ethereals vibrated with harmonic frequencies that seemed to mock human concerns. Even species that Jake had considered friendly showed nothing but contempt for humanity's situation. Council Prime Zex Kaller interrupted with a wave of his massive clawed hand. He reminded Jake that humans were a young species with much to learn about galactic civilization. He suggested that humanity should be grateful for the Council's guidance instead of complaining about necessary restrictions. His tone carried the same condescending attitude that Jake had heard in every previous meeting. Jake felt his carefully controlled anger beginning to surface as he listened to the familiar excuses. The Council always claimed they were protecting humanity from their own violent nature while ignoring the fact that humans had never attacked anyone. They painted themselves as wise guardians while treating humanity like dangerous children who couldn't be trusted with real freedom. The moment had arrived for Jake to deliver the words that would change everything. He looked directly at Council Prime Zex Kaller and spoke with quiet intensity about humanity's true nature. The aliens had mistaken patience for weakness and cooperation for submission. They had forgotten that humans were the only species in the galaxy that had turned their entire planet into a weapon, just to fight each other. The chamber fell silent as Jake's words began to sink in. For the first time, the alien delegates seemed to be paying attention to what he was saying. The casual conversation stopped and the dismissive sounds faded as beings throughout the chamber realized that something was different about this human's speech. Jake continued speaking about humanity's history of warfare and survival. He reminded them that humans had developed faster than light travel, not to explore the galaxy but to build better weapons. While other species had evolved beyond individual aggression, humans had simply learned to point their violence in more productive directions. Admiral Wells' voice suddenly filled the chamber as she overrode the Council's communication systems. With embarrassing ease, her words were calm and professional as she identified herself as the commander of the Earth Defense Force. The fact that she could break through their security so casually was the first hint that humanity might be more dangerous than the Council had realized. The Admiral's message was simple and direct. The Council had 30 minutes to lift the blockade of New Haven Colony and grant humanity full membership with all the rights and privileges that came with it. They also needed to provide reparations for 15 years of economic discrimination and unfair treatment. Council Prime Zex Kaller rose to his full imposing height and demanded to know what would happen if the Council refused humanity's demands. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never been seriously threatened, but Jake could see uncertainty beginning to creep into his yellow eyes. Jake's smile was cold and dangerous as he explained that the Council would discover why. Humans were the only species that had developed space travel specifically to build better weapons. His words carried a quiet menace that made several alien delegates shift uncomfortably on their platforms. The casual arrogance that had dominated the chamber began to give way to something approaching concern. The chamber's main screens flickered to life, showing the space around the Council station. Where moments before only a handful of human ships had been visible, hundreds of vessels now appeared as they dropped their stealth systems simultaneously. The hidden fleet that Admiral Wells had positioned throughout the system revealed itself. In a display of military power that left the alien delegates speechless, Jake watched with satisfaction as the Council members realized the scope of humanity's deception. The few dozen ships they had been allowed to see were nothing compared to the massive fleet that had been hiding in plain sight, using technology the Council had thought impossible. The humans had been preparing for this moment for years, while the aliens had been congratulating themselves on their superior wisdom. The tactical displays showed human ships in perfect formation, surrounding the Council station and blocking every escape route. More ships continued to appear as the full extent of humanity's military preparation became clear. Admiral Wells had positioned her forces with the precision of a chess master who had been planning this move for years. Council Prime's ex-scholars. Composure finally began to crack as he realized that humanity had outmaneuvered the entire galactic establishment. The species he had dismissed as primitive and harmless had somehow built a fleet that rivaled the combined forces of the Council's most powerful members. His voice showed the first signs of uncertainty as he demanded an explanation for this unprecedented display of military power. Jake checked his chronometer and announced that 29 minutes remained for the Council to make their decision. The casual dismissal and condescending attitudes had vanished as the alien delegates began to understand that they were facing their first real challenge in centuries. Humanity had finally revealed their true nature, and the galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Alan Carter sat in his laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars and stared at the genetic data displayed on his screen. What he had discovered 3 months ago would change everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The test results showed something that should have been impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. Every advanced species in the galaxy shared the same evolutionary weakness. They had all moved beyond individual aggression and personal violence. As they developed technology, the hive creatures thought as one mind with no concept of betrayal or surprise attacks. The ethereals existed in perfect harmony with each other and could not imagine deliberate deception. Even the warrior Zentari followed strict honor codes that made them predictable in battle. Humanity was completely different. They were the only species that had developed faster than light travel while keeping their ability to lie and kill and sacrifice everything for survival. Every other race had given up these traits as they became civilized, but humans had simply learned to control them instead of abandoning them entirely. Carter remembered the day he first realized what this meant. He had been studying tissue samples from various alien species when he noticed the pattern. All of them showed genetic markers that indicated peaceful evolution. Their brains had developed in ways that promoted cooperation and reduced aggression. Humanity's brains still contained all the ancient pathways for violence and deception. The implications were staggering. While other species had become more civilized, humans had become more dangerous. They had all the benefits of advanced technology, combined with the cunning and ruthlessness of their ancestors. No wonder the Galactic Council feared them. They just didn't understand why they should be afraid. Lieutenant Commander Ben Taylor received the coded transmission from Admiral Wells while his ship drifted silently in the asteroid belt. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear. Operation Revelation was about to begin, and humanity would finally show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Ben's ship was officially listed as a research vessel studying asteroid composition. In reality, it was the most advanced stealth ship in the human fleet, equipped with sensors that could detect enemy movement from incredible distances. For the past 2 years, it had been watching alien patrol routes and recording their tactical responses to various situations. The data Ben had collected painted a clear picture of galactic military doctrine. The alien fleets were designed for show rather than serious combat. They relied on overwhelming numbers and superior technology to intimidate potential enemies. Their formations were beautiful but impractical. Their weapons were powerful but slow to target. Their commanders followed textbook strategies that any human military academy student could predict. Ben activated his communication array and sent updates to the hidden fleet waiting in the outer system. Admiral Wells had positioned over 300 ships in the Kuiper Belt where they would be invisible to alien sensors. The Council believed humans had only 50 vessels total because that was what they had been allowed to see. Chief Engineer Sandra King worked frantically in the engine room as her team prepared the ship's experimental weapons systems. The quantum disruptors had been tested only twice before, and both times they had exceeded all expectations. The alien fleets used energy shields that could deflect most conventional weapons, but they had never encountered anything like human quantum technology. Sandra had helped design the disruptors based on theoretical research that the Council had declared too dangerous to pursue. While alien scientists worried about the ethical implications of such weapons, humans had simply built them and moved on to even more destructive designs. The galaxy's commitment to peaceful solutions had left them completely unprepared for humanity's approach to warfare. The hidden fleet began moving into position as Admiral Wells coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels revealed their true nature as they shed their fake hulls. Mining stations throughout the system activated weapons that had been built into their structures. Even civilian transports opened hidden compartments containing fighter squadrons. Admiral Wells stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the tactical display show the alien response to humanity's diplomatic mission. Exactly as predicted, the Council had ordered their fleets to take threatening positions around human territories. They were preparing to teach humanity a lesson about respecting galactic authority. What they didn't know was that humans had been studying their every move for years. Every alien ship type had been analyzed and cataloged. Every weapon system had been tested against human defenses. Every tactical doctrine had been war-gamed by human strategists who understood that preparation was the key to victory. The Council fleets moved with the confidence of predators cornering helpless prey. Their formations were perfect examples of galactic military theory, with heavy ships in the center and fast scouts on the flanks. They approached human positions with the casual arrogance of superior beings dealing with primitives. Admiral Wells smiled as she watched them fall into the trap. The aliens had no idea that their every movement was being tracked by sensors they couldn't detect. They didn't know that their communications were being intercepted and decoded in real time. They certainly didn't suspect that humanity had been preparing for this confrontation since the first diplomatic insult 5 years ago. Dr. Carter's research had provided the foundation for humanity's strategy. If other species had evolved beyond individual aggression, then they would be vulnerable to tactics that relied on deception and surprise. Their peaceful nature was their greatest weakness when facing an opponent that had no such limitations. The alien fleets continued their approach while human forces remained hidden and waiting. Every human ship captain knew their role in the plan that would either secure humanity's freedom or destroy them completely. There was no middle ground and no room for mercy in what was about to happen. Ben Taylor watched his sensors as the alien formations came within range of the hidden human fleet. The moment of truth was approaching, and humanity would finally reveal the price of 15 years of accumulated anger and preparation. The galaxy was about to learn that underestimating humans was the last mistake many species would ever make. Sandra King completed the final checks on her weapon systems and reported ready status to the bridge. Throughout the fleet, similar reports were coming in as humanity prepared to show the Council what happened when you push the wrong species too far. The time for hiding was over, and the time for action had finally arrived. Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and felt the artificial gravity of the Council station pull at his boots. The massive structure stretched out in all directions like a metal city floating in space. Ships from dozens of alien worlds docked at various ports while strange beings moved through the corridors with purpose. Jake had been here many times before, but today felt different. Captain Lisa Rodriguez walked beside him, carrying a sealed briefcase that contained humanity's final message to the Galactic Council. Her dark eyes showed the same anger that Jake felt burning in his chest. 15 years of insults and restrictions had led to this moment. The aliens thought they could treat humans like children forever, but they were about to learn otherwise. The main corridor buzzed with activity as various species went about their business. The insect-like hive creatures clicked and chirped to each other in their strange language. Tall, graceful beings made of what looked like living gas floated past without seeming to notice the humans. Most intimidating were the Centauri with their green scales and sharp claws, who considered themselves the military leaders of the galaxy. Jake remembered his first visit here 5 years ago, when he still believed diplomacy could work. He had been so hopeful then, thinking that humans could find their place among the stars through peaceful negotiation. The Council had other ideas. They assigned humanity to the worst planets with no resources. They blocked human trade ships from the profitable routes. They ignored every request for fair treatment. The final insult came 3 weeks ago when the Centauri Empire decided to blockade New Haven Colony. 2 million human settlers were trapped on the planet with no way to get medical supplies or food shipments. When Jake demanded an explanation, the Council simply said it was for the greater good of galactic stability. They claimed humans were too aggressive and needed to be controlled for everyone's safety. Rodriguez touched his arm gently as they approached the main council chamber. She had been with him through every failed negotiation and broken promise. Like Jake, she had served in Earth's military before becoming a diplomat. Unlike many of their colleagues, she understood that sometimes peace could only come through strength. The chamber doors opened to reveal a vast space filled with floating platforms where the various alien delegates sat. The architecture was designed to intimidate with its massive scale and strange geometric patterns. Council Prime Zex Kaller dominated the center platform with his imposing reptilian form. His yellow eyes looked down at the humans with obvious disdain. Jake walked to the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. Around him, hundreds of alien beings watched with varying degrees of interest. Most seemed bored, as if this was just another routine complaint from an inferior species. The hive creatures buzzed quietly among themselves while the gaseous ethereals pulsed with soft colors. Council Prime Zex Kaller spoke first, as was tradition. His voice boomed across the chamber with authority that had never been challenged. He explained that the blockade of New Haven was necessary to teach humans proper respect for galactic law. He claimed that human aggression was a threat to peaceful species everywhere, and that restrictions were the only way to maintain order. Jake listened to the familiar arguments with growing rage. The Council always painted humans as the problem, while ignoring their own actions. They forgot that humans had followed every law and treaty for 15 years. They forgot that human colonies had never attacked anyone or threatened galactic peace. They only remembered the convenient lie that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. When the Prime finished speaking, Jake stepped forward. He had prepared this speech for months, knowing it might be the last time he addressed the Council as a diplomat. His voice carried clearly across the chamber as he spoke about humanity's patience and willingness to work within the system. He reminded them of every broken promise and unfair restriction. The alien delegates showed little interest in his words. Some continued their private conversations, while others seemed to be sleeping. This casual dismissal of human suffering was exactly what Jake had expected. It was also exactly what Admiral Corenwells needed to justify what came next. Jake reached into his pocket and pressed a small button on his communicator. The signal traveled instantly through space to the Earth Defense Force flagship waiting in the outer system. Admiral Wells received the coded message and immediately began issuing orders to her fleet commanders. Protocol 7 was humanity's last resort and its most dangerous gamble. The council chamber erupted in surprised sounds. When Jake announced that humanity's patience was at an end, the hive creatures began clicking rapidly while the ethereals pulsed with alarmed colors. Even the proud Centauri showed signs of concern as they realized something had changed. Jake explained that humans had tried diplomacy and cooperation for 15 years without success. He told them about the suffering on New Haven and the countless other injustices that the Council had ignored. His voice grew stronger as he spoke about humanity's determination to protect their people no matter what the cost. Council, Prime Zex Kaller interrupted with a contemptuous laugh. He reminded Jake that humans had only a few dozen ships and no real power in the galaxy. He suggested that humanity should accept their place as a junior species and be grateful for the Council's protection. The arrogance in his voice was the same that Jake had heard in every previous meeting. What the Prime didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the first diplomatic failure. While the Council had been ignoring human requests, Earth's military had been working on a plan that would change everything. Admiral Wells and her staff had spent 3 years developing strategies that took advantage of humanity's unique strengths. Jake smiled coldly as he prepared to deliver humanity's ultimatum. Around him, the alien delegates continued their casual conversations, unaware that their comfortable world was about to be shattered. The Council had grown lazy and complacent after centuries of unchallenged authority. They had forgotten that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you underestimate. The moment had arrived for humanity to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Jake took a deep breath and began to speak the words that would either secure humanity's freedom or start the first galactic war in 1,000 years.